You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of medtech with your host, Omar and Khateeb. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So today's solo pod isn't a solo pod per se. It's actually one of my guest appearances on a new podcast called Musings with Morales, a really cool long format podcast that interviews business leaders from a variety of different places, a lot of healthcare, but also other industries. They have a great YouTube channel. Go subscribe to them, show them some love. Musings with Morales. The way this came about is Michael Morales, who's the founder of the Dialysis Education Services, reached out to me on Instagram, has been following All Hail Medical Sales and invited me on the show. I drove up to his studio in person up in LA, and we sat down for a really great conversation over scotch in his Dialysis Education Center. His back office, they set up this beautiful studio. I felt like I was transformed to a different world. So this happened on a Sunday night, and it's just a great conversation. We talk about medical sales and trends in medtech, family, psychology, persuasion, and just a whole lot of other topics. I think this is a great episode for you to enjoy while you're on the road, driving back from a case, or maybe you just have a long road trip ahead of you. So check this out, and I hope you enjoy it. And just as a small reminder, if you're in medical device sales rep and you're looking to level up your game, I want you to join my Medical Sales Network Effects program, where you're going to get access to over 50 videos to teach you what I do for a living, which is how do you take digital channels like LinkedIn, email, and others to find surgeons, persuade them, get more deals, close more offers, and more. We have a great private network where you'll meet with other reps, CEOs, and VPs. That's a private group on LinkedIn. Plus, we've started to make recommendations based on people in our program. So a lot of CEOs and startups come to me for recommendations on sales directors, sales reps, marketing people who have been trained using my methodology. And of course, I always look in my program to make those recommendations. So little by little, it's starting to catch wind and become more of an in-demand type of person. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can check the show notes below or go to www.digitalmedicalsales.com and use the code President's Club Podcast. You get $1,000 off to join that course, and you have full access to it. So with that being said, let's get on to the episode. Enjoy. Warren Buffett's business partner, Charlie Munger, is like a surrogate grandfather to me. And he passed away. And he had a great saying, which is like, to get the things that you want in life, you need to deserve the things that you want in life. Because the world is not a crazy enough place to give you what you want. Yeah, to give undeserving people what they want. And what he means by that is that you have to work hard. If there's one thing, like of all the things I'm going to teach my son and his soon-to-be siblings, we're going to hopefully go for another one this year.
All right.
Yeah. is I want to teach them and reward them about the idea of just working hard and being persistent.
Yeah.
Because if you find a way to work as hard as you can and as smart as you can, etc., to make failure like just not an option, like you can achieve great things. They're like kids coming out of college, they're broke, and they're like, oh, but my passion and everything. I'm like, life is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say if you're listening to this podcast and you live in America, man, you made it.
Right.
You won the lottery.
Yeah.
Right? There's and I think like there's this like sense of entitlement that like people have about things. I'm just like, like you're entitled to nothing.
You're listening to Musings with Morales, brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Welcome to Musings with Morales. I'm Morales, and I want to thank my special guest today, Omar. I cannot believe you answered the call, but I reached out to you about a week and a half ago. You agreed to come out here, obviously did some due diligence. On a Sunday, you came out, made the mission. Appreciate you.
I love having like conversations like this and meeting new people. And so I was very excited to be invited on your show. I thought the message you sent to me was very genuine and wholehearted. So when I checked you out and checked out the show, I was very happy to drive them, especially it's local. I mean, there's something to be said. You know, I've done over 160, 170 episodes on my show, but only a handful of them have done like in person. So it's really nice to meet people. You know, it's a different vibe, right?
Yeah.
It's a different vibe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The show that you've done those episodes on, that's the State of Medtech?
Yeah, that's the State of Medtech. That's right. That's right.
Well, you know, it's not the first message I've sent to you. I have reached out to you in the past. We've talked a little bit about med device sales.
That's right.
I know you do a lot of coaching, a lot of consulting. I met you for the first time at LSI last year in Newport
that was
Beach.
a long time. Yeah, are you going to go back this year?
You know, I'm not sure if I'm on the calendar for that, but my company will be out there.
Nice.
And yeah, it was an interesting experience for me though, because I had been seeing you online previous to that. Obviously, taking benefit out of the messages that you were sending and the advices that you were sharing. But then I saw you walk in, and I remember kind of feeling like I saw a young congressman come in the room.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, I try and walk with a little bit of swagger when I enter a place.
I would say, you know, mission accomplished. And something that really struck me was that you had your young child and your wife, and they were, you know, where I come from, we call it like your rag, right? You know, your bandana, your flag, right?
Yeah.
It was like first and foremost, and I even watched some of the session that you moderated. First and foremost, I identify as a father and a husband, and that really impressed on me, to tell you the truth. How important is family in the mission that you've been on?
It's the number one thing, and again, like I feel very grateful and honored that, you know, in your invitation up here, and I get to meet your wife and your son, which was very, very sweet. But yeah, no, it's really important. I think once you decide, and I'm going to speak from the perspective as you know, as a man, because that's the only perspective that I know.
Right.
But as a man, you know, once you find somebody who's worthy of being your spouse, you know, that changes your perspective on life.
Yeah.
And more importantly, the boundaries that you decide to set and enforce. You know. And then having a child, you know, takes it to another level. You know, so for me, it was always a dream for me to live in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. So I did that, got married, you know, and then, you know, when I moved my wife out there, all of a sudden things that didn't bother me started to bother me. You know, the homelessness, the crime and everything. And we lived in a very nice area outside of the city in the suburbs. But even that, I decided that was not I would not tolerate that. You know, it didn't sit in line with my values, and so that's what moved us down to SoCal to be closer to family and everything.
Is that both families, her side of family, your side of the family as well?
Yeah, so mainly my parents. Her family's still back in Turkey, so you know I'm half Turkish, half Iraqi.
Okay,
You know? And so yeah, so that's what brought us, you know, down here. But yeah, to go back to your question, like you know, family's everything. You know, and I think you know, we'll talk more about, you know, business and everything. You know, I am definitely, I have very big ambitions, you know, big goals that I want to achieve and everything. But at the end of the day, it's all meaningless to me in the sense that it's really a means to an end. And what I'm really after is freedom and to provide the family the kind of life that that they deserve. And part of that is to give them as much time as I want. And I think a lot of times business people, they forget, like, why are we doing this? You know, like I didn't start my company so I can spend it on the road all the time and to be not mentally present with my wife and son.
I think you checked in recently on that in a recent post, or whether it was on LinkedIn or I think you had kind of checked in and shared an experience of a conversation with your father around that time.
Oh yeah, that was a popular post, the one where he chewed me out essentially. Yeah, essentially, because you know, I was you know, starting a new business as you know, you've been in the game a lot longer than me. You know, it's not easy.
No,
and you know, we talk about these things like being present with the family and everything. We know this, but sometimes we forget.
Right.
You know, and so my dad, you know, very rightfully so, called me out on it.
Yeah, that's great. And again, it's an admiration of mine. I mean, when I look at you from afar, it's very clear that there is a foundation from your parents, and then now a new foundation with the family that you're at the helm of. And it's, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at today, Omar, because nobody on the line, with the exception of maybe those who are already following you, But from my guess, I don't know that they're looking at med device sales. I really focus a lot on dialysis and nephrology, staffing. So this may be a first for some. What are you doing today, and maybe the journey that got you there?
Yeah, I'll kind of fast forward to today. So today, I have a company called Khateeb & Co. It's more of a holding company that has a few entities underneath it. The main one is essentially that my mission is to change the way we sell and market in medtech. Okay, and more importantly, how do we take devices and technologies to market successfully?
Right.
So I work with startups in terms of raising awareness so they can raise money with investors. And then the other side is working with med device companies and biotech companies to take their products to market. Right? Because I think, especially when it comes to selling high tech products, right, robotics, AI, etc. It's very important who buys and uses your product first, and how do they do it. That's
Absolutely.
what opens your market.
Yeah.
Right. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, I started before I even knew what my business was, I started a media company, which is my podcast, The State of Medtech. And The State of Medtech is really a source of truth for the industry, sits at the intersection of science and business. And so on that show, I have investors, I have CEOs, I have, well-known physicians on.
Yeah.
But then I also do
Great role.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. And then I haven't done a couple in the last couple of weeks because I didn't want to. Sometimes I feel like if you try and force things, it just doesn't come out well. But I usually also do solo pods where I record an episode specifically for sales reps, because a lot of them are young, out on the road and stuff, and they want mentorship. They want in-depth dive into certain topics, and so I record those kind of episodes. Yeah. So that's essentially what I do for a living now.
I see that you get a lot of traction as far as people reaching out to you. Again, even at the LSI conference, it was very clear that you've got a track record with people. Can you kind of go through maybe, I don't know if you can share the companies, but kind of what are some of the accomplishments, the roles that you've served through different medtech companies, where they started, where they ended up? Yeah,
absolutely. And maybe like a good place to start is kind of like, where did I come from and everything. So first generation American, born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Right around along the U.S.-Mexican border. Dad is from Iraq, mom's from Turkey. My father was a general surgeon growing up, had his own private practice for over 35 years. My mother was a, professor of anatomy and biology at the local college.
Wow.
And then, like most kids in college, I was pre-med. Unlike most kids, I actually stuck to it. I went to medical school at Texas Tech on a full academic scholarship. But then halfway through, I just realized it wasn't for me. Decided to drop out. My father was the most supportive of
Really?
that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was supportive.
That seems like so unstereotypical of like a surgeon father or a physician
especially a
father.
Middle Eastern man, with their firstborn son going to medical. Yeah, it's very uncharacteristic, but I have a great father. And then from there, I did cold calling, door-to-door sales for a collection agency software company called Trans World Systems. So that was a really humbling jump because it was just hard. And then I got my first break getting into robotic spine surgery as a medical sales rep. So I did that for a year and a half. The one superpower I got out of medical school was not clinical knowledge, believe it or not. It was actually the ability to teach myself anything. Because the first 2 years of medical school, you teach yourself medicine. The faculty's there to, they have lectures and everything. They don't really teach you medicine. You literally teach yourself medicine.
Yeah.
So being able to teach myself anything was a superpower. So when I got out and starting off in the world of medtech, I had to learn about sales and marketing. And so the first thing I did was like, what books are there? And sales and marketing people aren't very good at teaching themselves stuff. They're, the average person, in my opinion, is pretty lazy in our industry. In the sense that they, the continuing education, everything, they don't sit down and put in the work. This is just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So educating myself that way, got really good at marketing. Management heard about this, and they decided to promote me to U.S. marketing manager. So this is Mazor Robotics. It was the first first robotic spine company in the world. They were publicly traded. Eventually, they got acquired by Medtronic for about 1.6 billion in 2016. Left there. And then, the last 12 years of my career, I worked at high tech, first of its kind, really complex technology in a marketing role. And by marketing, I mean sales at scale, building and molding a market and figuring out how you drive adoption. Okay, not product management. I did some product management, but that's
I was going to go there. It's like, where'd you land as far as with the robotics? Was it cleared through FDA, already in the market? And you came into a role?
Mazor. Yeah, when I started with them, they were already FDA cleared. They did a 510K, and it was being used. And by the time I left, we had done, I think, about 10. We had hit a 10,000 cases. We had done 10,000. Yeah. And from there, I just worked at different companies and, served in different roles and everything. But I think the highlight of my career is understanding the psychology behind how people adopt new products and technologies. There's a whole adoption curve about where that happens and how it happens.
Right.
And then understanding how do you mold markets and get traction. So for me, I think this is an important thing of life, not just career, but understanding like your personality, where you fit is important. You take a company like Johnson & Johnson or Medtronic or something, and they come to me and say, hey, like we have a $2-3 billion business unit. I don't know what to do with that. But if you come to me and say, hey, we're a pre-seed or Series A company, we've raised $5 million, and our runway is like 6 months, we need to get traction with the market, and we have to have a convincing story to tell investors to raise our next round. That I know what to do with that.
So you're really into like the critical path of a startup, from inception through funding through development,
and it's my personality too. I think people who gravitate towards startups, they don't know how to get along with other people, because when you're in a place like it's true. See, Paco's loving this.
Yeah.
But it's true. When you work at a J&J, Medtronic, these larger organizations, you need to know how to get along with people. You need to be bureaucratic, you be diplomatic and everything. In a startup world, I don't have the tolerance or the patience to sit in a meeting and watch something and just not call BS on it.
Right.
I just can't.
Yeah.
And so in startups, startups have their own politics and hierarchies you have to follow. But in the startup world, it's like there's no time for any of that nonsense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's wasted time as wasted money, and wasted market time. Market speed, right? Like
I'll never forget the very first tongue lashing I got earlier in my career, which was well deserved. Which was I went to a meeting and the CEO asked me hey, can you prepare a presentation, kind of walk us through an analysis of what happened at this conference and everything. So I go and I start going through the slides, and of course I was so young, fresh out of school, I didn't know anything. And the mistake I started doing was I was literally reading from the slide, and he interrupts me and he goes, "You're wasting my time right now." Yeah. So there's no time to mess around.
We were talking creativity the other day, and we were actually talking a podcast about startups and tattoos. And I was like, I'm the least creative person. I really am the least creative person. Have a horrible time dressing, cannot dance, cannot sing, cannot draw, cannot paint. None of that stuff.
I'm gonna have to challenge you on that. I don't think you're uncreative. I mean, look, you started this podcast. You have some really interesting guests.
We had that argument with a very creative, artistic person, right? And he said the same thing. It's you have a different sort of creativity. And when we're talking about startups, one thing that I notice is, like you said, you don't have time to waste. Somebody said it to me, and it was a founder of the COVID operation that I talked about earlier to you. We don't have time, right? He said he kept texting me, and I guess I'm somewhat naive to some of these sayings, but he kept texting me, and at the end of his text, he would put KISS, KISS, right? And I'm like, for a good month, I'm sitting there going what the heck is this guy texting me KISS after every text, right? And finally, I was like, what are you saying? And he's like, keep it simple, stupid. And I've worked in a few startups, and that has been, I think, by far the most beneficial approach that I've seen in startups. At a certain point, there's really a lot of weeds, though, right? I mean, when we talk about a med device company that's going through research and development or starting to submit FDA, it gets really, really granular, gets really, really sticky. Experiences with those, that side of it? You said not product development, but...
no, of course. I mean, one of the benefits about, in my opinion, when you're in Medtech, med device, and working in marketing, is that marketing is really a training ground for people who want to become CEOs. And the reason why is that in med device, at least, they don't do this in tech, like big tech and everything. But in Medtech, marketing is the only department in the organization that touches every other department. They touch finance, accounting, regulatory, legal, quality, sales, everything. And so, I get involved with that. So like even, for me, part of marketing, this is kind of one of those interesting things about being in that role. You interact with people in regulatory and legal and stuff. And at least from my bias, my filter on everything is there's a psychological filter.
Yeah.
And so understanding who you're dealing with, and this goes starts going into persuasion. So like for example, when you deal with legal and regulatory people, okay, their job is to make sure that nothing goes wrong,
right.
which means they're very good at saying no to things.
Yeah.
Right. They'll shoot everything. Yeah. And so
Yep.
most marketers hate regulatory and legal. For me, I think when you start to understand somebody else's perspective very well, that's when you start to learn how to persuade and influence them.
Yeah.
So understanding what's important to them is good, developing those relationships, and then asking the right questions. I think a big part of your life, I think the quality of your life will be reflected in the questions that you ask, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with regulatory and legal, anytime and I did some pretty wild campaigns in my day, and then we can get to that in a moment, like really provocative ones just for our industry. But a lot of times when I talk to legal, I wouldn't say like, can I do this or can we do this? I would just ask, I was like, how can we do this? Because that's going to solicit a different answer than can I do this?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I definitely want to get to the persuasion as well. Watching some of your recent posts, there was one, and we'll get to it, but angry partners, angry clients. I really want to.
Oh yeah,
really want
that's
to get
a classic
to that
one.
Because I actually had an experience, and I'll share it with you. That I was like, oh, this guy must have watched Omar, because he responded perfectly to my anger, and I'll share that with you. But again, just the journey. You've got the podcast, State of Medtech. You've also got a company that you mentioned, the private holding company, and then you've got, is All Hail Medical Sales, is that the name of your page, or is that
that's the Instagram handle? Yeah.
Okay.
And the best way I can say this is, brevity is not my thing, so I'm gonna go on. Per the title of this podcast, it's Musings with Morales. So I'm gonna muse on this a little bit.
There we go.
So why have an Instagram handle, All Hail Medical Sales? It seems to be different from my State of Medtech and everything. So if you go back in history, business books are great. You really want to learn about business, become a savvy business person.
Yep.
Study history. Okay, could you learn a lot from a marketing book? Sure. You know what's like the ultimate marketing? Propaganda.
Right.
So if you go back to the 1900s, the father of PR and one of the probably most successful marketers and propagandists of all time was a guy named Edward Bernays. Okay. And there's books. He's written books. He has a book literally called Propaganda, written in 1909. And Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who was his beloved uncle. And Edward Bernays manufactured so many campaigns on a lot of things that you and I know today. Like, for example, he manufactured like feminist movements, like stuff like that. And so the reason why I mention him is that one of the most important foundations that he talks about is the importance of having a media outlet, right? Because that way you can broadcast and influence, okay? So for me, part of my mission is to change this industry. So one of those things is I need to, find and influence the key people who are in the trenches on the troops on the ground, which are medical salespeople. Okay, and so medical salespeople, they like memes, they like comedy, they like these things, and they're young people. So that page serves as a place for me to use memes, which are memetics, is a very powerful way of influencing things. Think about when we think of memes, we think of cute, funny things, but I can guarantee you that you've seen a meme that's had an impact on how you perceive things politically, socially, etc. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other side is a form of sales inspiration. And so if my average viewer in All Hail Medical Sales on Instagram, you're like part of the fringe, by the way. You're part of like the small 1%. But the majority of the people who follow that page are anywhere between the age of like, and I looked at the data on this on Instagram, it's like 20 to about 32.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah,
they're all single people on the road. Yeah. So that's why I was like, oh, sweet. But I found out there's a lot of like VPs and CEOs who follow it too. But this is my direct channel to them to put content out in front of them to see what's important for them, because I want to learn the desires and fears of the people, because I don't want to assume that just because I was a rep that I know.
Right.
Things have changed, right?
Yep.
And so this is my direct channel to engage directly with the market, you know? And so that part of that is for me to understand, how do I create products and services to serve those people? And then how do I take those people and also use it to achieve the mission that I want? Because eventually some of those people, they'll get promoted to director roles, VP roles, etc.
Yeah.
And then when they get to that point, after 3, 5, 10 years of consuming my content, learning from me and everything, when they get a budget and they're like, where should we go spend this? I want to go spend this with Omar Khateeb and his company, because he trained and educated. You see what I mean?
Yep.
So that's part of the reason. And I'll be honest with you, it's a great outlet. I have a lot of fun, and it's almost like it's like probably the lowest form of leverage I have, because I'm not making money off of that channel really, but I get a sense of personal satisfaction engaging with people there. I answer I get so many DMs. I answer all of them. Some of them I like send video message to. I'll like, Instagram has like a calling feature where you can video chat somebody. Yeah. I do that sometimes just to surprise rep and just help them out. So I get a sense of personal satisfaction from doing it.
I think that's really smart. And, I've watched enough of you. I started with the State of Medtech. That's where I don't even know how I came across it. It might have been when in my current
it's
role.
working.
I tell you the truth, I think when I came into this role, I'm a director of clinical training and support, which is the start of the commercial organization for a company I work with. First time role for me. And I was asking everybody like, hey, what's your day look like? Right? I was asking all the people that I know, what's your day look like? Now, I come from dialysis industry, and most of the people that are working in med device are working with very established, like gorillas, right? A startup med device company, totally new for anybody that's even seasoned in the industry, because we haven't had a lot of innovation in dialysis over the last 40 years. We're starting to see a lot right now. So I was asking around, and I probably YouTubed and looked up med device or something like med device sales, and ran across State of Medtech. But when I got to the all hell sales, I probably pointed from the YouTube channel. That's when I reached out to you, and it's a conversation I think will continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I own at this point 3 businesses of my own, and I also am an employee of a med device organization full time, leading their clinical training and support organization. So again, it's new. I've taken an approach to really hire people to work with me that know what they're doing. Have the experience, whether it's in operations or in the med device space itself. And I've got kind of a very diverse group there. But, it's been very helpful to watch your content. It's very candid. It's also very genuine. And I think everything you just said as far as, it's not a revenue line, but at the same time, it is aligned to revenue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, what's interesting about the podcast is that the podcast is generating its own revenue now, just from sponsors and everything. But if essentially the other side of it, if we're looking at it from the business side, it serves as a flywheel for me.
Right.
Because if you look at the State of Medtech, which again, even the name is very authoritative for a reason.
Yes.
I have different categories, and I have investors and VCs, I have physicians. So for example, there are reps who listen to my show religiously. They've never listened to an investment episode ever. It's kind of a shame. They should. But the point is that it brings in different types of audiences based on the content that person's consuming and getting educated through me, which is also very persuasive. When you're getting educated by somebody, there's an authority piece there. You trust them, right?
Yep.
And then I can push them into one of those offerings. And at the end of the day, I'm operating a business and everything, but also I genuinely believe that based on some of the things I provide, I know that I can help people. I know wholeheartedly that I could put a medtech company in the best possible position to raise money. I mean, I'll give you an example is, there's a robotics company, a very impressive one out of France called Moon Surgical. They came to me coming out of stealth mode 2 years ago. So nobody knew about them. We had 30 days to go until JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco, where it's, it's a big investment conference. And so in those 30 days, we created some content, we did some live streams, I did some messaging for them, and then, laid a foundation for them And a few months later, they raised I think $30 million Series A.
Wow.
Then in 2023, they raised I think a $60 or $70 million Series B with NVIDIA leading the round. And, both the CEO and Chief Strategy Officer both credited what we did for them as a big reason why they were in the position to do that. And now they've come back 2 years later, they've raised all this money, and now we're engaged with them on a commercial side, which is like we're helping them find early adopter surgeons. They don't have a sales force. They use my company, and we profile and find the it's like finding a needle in the haystack, which is finding the right person to adopt the technology at a certain point, right? And so like that's a great example of a company whose life cycle we started from the very beginning, provided value. They went on, raised money, and everything came back, And so for me, long term, what I would love to do is to be that flywheel where companies come to me very early on. They want to have help with, raising some awareness, fundraising, et cetera. They do that. They come back. Maybe they put some of their salespeople through. I have a medical sales course that people go through that teaches them how to sell through social media, right? Maybe they come back and say, hey, we have more money. We want you to deploy your strategies. And at some point later on, just because of the people coming on my show, I want to get enough of a network where I know business development people at certain strategics where I say, hey, this is a good company for you guys' portfolio, and then I help with an acquisition event. The main thing is that there's different points of relationship throughout that company life cycle that I want to be involved with and help.
Yeah, I want to really dive into some of that actually, but I promised myself because I've noticed some really cool habits or hobbies. One, the one that I think I pointed out as far as admiration of the balance and the mindset you have towards your family time, towards the investment that you provide for your family with simple presence and leadership. So I'd like to start there.
Absolutely.
Kind of if you can talk a little bit about the balance.
And I'm just turning some things off on my phone real quick. I apologize.
No worries. The discipline it takes to prioritize that balance. Maybe, we've already shared there's been maybe some reminders and some network that family that keep you grounded.
So the question is really about like, how do you keep yourself grounded with the right habits and everything?
Yeah, you got a lot. I mean, several platforms. You talked about the identification of surgeons, and I want to get into that as well because I noticed you have some sort of tool for that that you offer. But there's a lot going on, and I know that when we talk startups, most expectations or the way that like founders of startups think is like, hey, I don't care what time it is. Like I want you on the horn, or I want you here now. I got this meeting. That's really a difficult challenge if you're going to be disciplined and put your family first.
Yeah, well, so it's different for me now. I mean, I have clients, and are there occasions where I have to do something outside hours? Something? Yeah, absolutely. There's a new client of mine where the VP is overseas because her father's in hospice and everything, so she's like having meetings with me like late at night, so I try and accommodate that. But even so, it's easier when you run your own business, right? Because you're the boss, you get to decide what you're going to tolerate. But if you're an employee, it's a little bit different. That all being said, earlier in my career, when I was junior, not at a director level and everything, I learned that you have to set boundaries, right? Are there going to be times in a startup where you got to work super hard around the clock? Absolutely. And this is why, like, when you're single and in your 20s, like, yeah, do that. Like if you work for example, in the Elon Musk company, like you're going to be grinding, right? But through that process, through that stress, like you'll grow a lot, you'll get this experience and everything. That's great. And I had those times too. But as you get older, like especially when you have a family, you have to put boundaries in place. So things that I see people do that are really stupid, that for some reason they think that it helps, is answering emails like after 6 p.m., for example, right? You shouldn't do that. Like there's certain, or answering certain calls, and I think you have to put those boundaries in place with your boss. Otherwise, they don't know those boundaries, and then they abuse it, and that's how you end up with disgruntled employees. Yeah, you have to learn how to do that. You can't assume that because nobody's going to assume it. And so, like, even myself, I have KPIs, key performance indicators for my business. You got to do the same thing for your family, right?
That's key.
And so you can't formalize it too much. So like, for example, I realized like, okay, every week I have a meeting with like key people in my organization, clients, everything. why don't I do that with my own wife?
Yeah.
Like have a marriage meeting once
Yep.
a week.
Oh,
How are
no.
things going and everything?
Oh no.
Yeah. So I try, like, I didn't want to formalize and like put it on like on the calendar, but I have it as a reminder for myself. And then like every other day or something, I'll have like a check-in with my wife. We'll be talking. We usually at night, like we put the kids to bed, we make some hot cocoa. We're not playing with our phones. And I like just talk to her, and I'm like, yeah, how are things going? What about this? And we have conversations, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's nothing wrong with facilitating like new games or things to kind of engage that. So, for example, a new friend of mine, this amazing surgeon out of Denver, Dr. Michael Snyder, who's like really, really well-respected bariatric surgeon, sent me as a gift like these, because we were talking about marriages, these cards. It's like a card game you play with your spouse. You like pick a card and there's a dice, and then like you answer a question.
Okay.
Like the question's like, what's something that your parents did growing up that you're afraid that you're going to end up doing as well and you want to avoid, right? So like those kind of things are important. And so I think the more conscious you are about it, the better. And I'll give you another one. Psychology says like if you really want to change your behavior, one of the best things is to publicize something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this is why I think people say like I'm going to be losing this much weight
Right.
or like going to the gym or anything.
Yeah, claim
so like,
it.
Yeah, so I publicize purposely. One because I want to serve as a symbol of example, but two to keep me on the hook of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
family's important. So like I'm taking my family to conferences.
Yeah.
It's a pain. Like try going to a conference with a toddler. It's a lot of work.
I mean, again, I was like, well, it helped with the young congressman look, though. You didn't have to like find babies to kiss. You had one
I had
in
one.
your
I
arm,
kissed my own
in your
baby,
arm
yeah.
already, ready to go, right?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up pretty close to here.
Got it.
In Lakewood, on the border of Lakewood, Hawaiian Gardens, and yeah, I had a little bit of a rough ride, and kind of went along with that rough ride when I got to the age to make decisions, right? But I had one thing in my life that my father introduced me to. He said, I want to put you in martial arts because I used to watch Kung Fu. Obvious, right? You can see the hair. I don't have the dots, but I used to love Kung Fu, and I would go to the barber and be like, hey, I want the Kung Fu haircut with the dots. And no, just get Bruce Lee, right? But he's like, okay, I want to put you in martial arts. And I was, I don't know, 10 or something like this. So that stuck. And I had a trainer or a teacher that became kind of another add-on to the father figure, taught me a lot of discipline. So I was very disciplined physically, very disciplined as far as, what I did every day in that regard, and then not so disciplined on other things, right? But when we talk where I'm at today, like everything rests on discipline, everything rests on accountability. And I love what you just said, that it's a reminder to you, it's you holding yourself accountable for the things that matter the most. And quite often we look at other people to hold us accountable, but that's a check on yourself, is you're making sure that you're doing what you need to do as the leader of the family, or the father, the husband in the family.
And, I'll tell you, this is a little like a different thing. I don't believe anymore that discipline is enough.
Yeah.
Discipline is very important. Discipline will set you free. So let's look at the levels of getting things done. The first level, and I think in my personal opinion, the lowest level is like through pure motivation. Like I'm motivated to do this.
Yep.
Well, one day you're going to wake up, you're not going to be motivated. You're going to be hungry. You're
That's
going to be in
right.
a bad mood, and then it doesn't happen.
That's
Then
right.
the level after that is like discipline. And
Yeah.
I think that's like the most difficult one to achieve first.
Yeah.
Which is I'm going to do this and you stay disciplined. But it's not enough to just be disciplined. You have to develop willpower, right? Because you can be disciplined to do something, but then maybe you do it half-heartedly that day, whatever it could be, like working out or doing this, whatever.
Yeah.
And so willpower is really important. And what I mean by that is if you look at again, psychology, you look at Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud always had this belief that people in life were doing two things. They're running away from pain and running towards desire, right? And so most of the time, people have the desire set up. I want to, get in really good shape. I want to make $1 million. I want this. I want that. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But pain is a really great way to push you through, right?
That's
And
right.
so you have to figure out, what are you running away from?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's important to go into your past and ask really, difficult questions to come to conclusions such as, I don't want to end up like my father or like my mother, or I don't want this, right? You have to remind yourself that. So for example, and this can be really intense. I mean, sometimes, I got to give a shout out to one of the original, I say this, he does not say this, one of the original fitness influencers online, who came up with online training was King Keto, Brandon Carter. So shout out to him who came up with this concept. But he has this thing called the list of great and the list of hate. List of great is list of names that he aspires to. List of hate is a list of people who doubted him, who said anything. And his thing is like every day he looks at that list of hate because he's like, if I don't get this done, those people are going to be right. I can't hate them. They're just going to be right?
Yeah.
And so I mentioned that because when I started my business, okay, it's just and you're a business owner. You tell me if this is right or wrong. It's like having a baby or getting married. There's never a good time to do it. You just got to do it.
100%.
So when I started my business, it was at the end of 2021. I was getting all these job offers because I was coming back from SaaS. I even had an opportunity to be a VP at a publicly traded company. So my ego was going nuts. I was like, oh, it's great. But I didn't feel anything. I just didn't feel intuitively. I just didn't feel. And, long story short, I in November, again, in the holidays, I was like, I think I need to, start my own thing. I don't know. My wife, who was pregnant, we were going to have a kid in May. So I'm not sitting on, millions of dollars in the bank.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to buy health insurance without being at a company.
Facing debt, the big debt coming up with a baby.
Yeah, well, not just that, but just, even health insurance. I had no idea, how do you get health insurance outside of a company, right? I was ignorant. And so then the idea of being an entrepreneur and running the life that I want, making more money, everything, that was a desire. But you know what? The pain I made sure to put behind me, and I would say that is what got me. Because those first 6 months, I did not know what I was doing, but somehow I made more than enough money to support a family and do really well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Was thinking about my son before he was born, and I thought about him, and I'm like, what am I going to tell my son 18 years from now if I don't do this? Am I going to tell him hey, your dad was too much of a coward to start his own business because I was afraid of a little bit of debt and health insurance and I could have been this or I should have done this, but I just didn't I didn't do it. I just felt it was very cowardly, and that motivated me a lot. The idea of regret, and so that pushed me hard. I would say that was I think that by itself was more of a motivator and enabler of discipline than my desires to get wealthy and independent and everything.
That resonates with me. I mean, the thought of failure in front of the little eyes, is major, and it makes me think of one of the I think it was in your moderation. You said to the investors and the innovators at LSI, you said, hey, my wife and son are here. If you got good tech, make sure you share it with them. And I thought that was so cool,
At some point, my son will be old enough. I'm gonna get him just to go around and look at companies and give him a criteria and just have him filter.
Have him pick.
I was telling my wife because LSI, I have a big shout out to Scott Pantel, who's the founder, amazing guy, and then his right hand man Henry Peck. They've just done. It's one of my favorite conferences and organizations, But I told my wife that I was like, wouldn't it be a trip if 18 or 20 years from now, our son gets into engineering or whatever, and then he ends up raising money for a Medtech company, presents at LSI.
Yeah.
That would be the most full circle thing of all time.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. Yeah, great thought. That on the great versus hate as well. I got to tell my story. I don't know if I've told it here before, and I'll keep it short. But I used to teach for another dialysis school. I own a dialysis school now, right? We train technicians and nurses to perform hemodialysis in any care setting. I worked for another school before I opened my own, and I graduated bachelor's degree in business and said, hey, I'd like to help you guys grow. And I was actually told, you're just a tech. I was a dialysis tech at the time. You're just a tech. You're not qualified. You're not a nurse. You're not a doctor, like this, right? So I said, well, how could I teach all your classes and run your program for you, but I can't help you grow? I'm just a tech, right? So when we talk about the hate, that statement to me really lit a fire that...
You're lucky.
Oh, man.
You should send that person a fruit basket.
I actually tried to hire them when their school went down in COVID. But it was today. It's not as much of a motivator to me because I realized, pretty quickly, like I can do it. The things that I don't have, I can find the right people for, right? You surround yourself with the right teams. You're not supposed to be the smartest person in every room or the only one qualified to do things in a business that you're going to scale, right?
Hiring people is a gateway drug, my friend. The moment, I don't have any full-time employees yet, but like I have a couple of contractors and stuff. The moment I got the first one, I was like, oh man, I don't have to do this anymore. This person's got to take it. Like, great.
Yeah.
You know?
You know your bandwidth, right? Like when you're talking about the bandwidth, I was also watching one of your posts with Rick Barnett, and he kind of mentioned the DNA of the medical device representative, right? Like that's the ideal person, and bandwidth was one that stood out to me as far as the ability to learn new things. I think the same Rick also talked about the reps actually serving some sort of technical purpose in an organization before they became reps, and I'd like to pick your brain on that a little bit as well. But let's talk about a couple other things, because you definitely prioritize and laser focus on your family, from your parents to your children to your wife, and I'm sure many more are in the network as well. But I see that you also you pay good attention to yourself. You're physically fit.
I appreciate it.
You are.
It's working.
Yeah. Well, I want to pick up some notes because I'm 46. I was physically fit, right? I'm one of those guys say, back when I played football, right? I didn't play football, but back in the days, right? Sports, like what kind of stuff do you do to keep yourself moving, functional, tight, whatever, flexible, fast? What do you like?
Yeah. And just a note on this. So like I look at salespeople, especially in medical sales, they're like athletes.
Yeah.
They have to be in top shape. They have to be physically fit. Mm-hmm. And some of them are going to take issue with this, but it's because you're carrying a lot of stuff. You're standing in the OR and everything. This is a wear and tear in your body. I have the same belief about surgical staff and surgeons as well, And so for me, I do a variety of things. So like hobbies that I'm into currently, I do jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. I have a garage gym. I work out in the garage gym all the time. I love golf. I got into golf last year.
I'm trying to talk myself into picking that up, but
you want to know? Let me tell you,
audience.
No, Morales. Let me tell you how you're gonna do that. You're gonna go find some buddies, go play golf. Okay, borrow some clubs and everything. The only thing that has to happen, it has to be a boys' trip. Okay, you just have to hit one semi-decent shot that the guys around you get excited, they cheer, and you get this feeling. And the moment that happens, you're going to be like, oh, man, I'm going to spend questionable amount of money and time chasing that feeling. But no, it's a great sport. Here's the I told you brevity's not my thing. And again, this is Musings with Morales, so we're gonna go off on a tangent on this one. We're just tiny side street we're gonna go down, okay? Let me just take you down this avenue. We'll go back on the main street in a second. So with golf, I try and question everything that I want to get into. I'm the kind of guy that when I get into something, I really get into it, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, I got to be careful of this. Like, why should I do this? Okay. Number one, it's a great way to do business.
Yeah.
A lot of people when they get older, like investors that I know and everything, they're not doing jujitsu or playing basketball or anything. Yeah. They're either playing golf or tennis, and for the most part, it's golf. Okay. That's number one. Number two, it's great physical activity because you're using your body and everything. You're outside, you get sunlight. If you don't go hunting, golf is the next best thing because you're going on landscapes.
Layers to the
it's beautiful.
There. Yeah,
and it's a very psychological game because it teaches you like how to keep your emotions calm, how to be positive. If something goes wrong, like how do you look at what you're doing and be like, I keep trying to like kill the ball when I hit it. Let me just slow it down. Let me do this. And it's very strategic. There's so many layers to it. Like Michael Jordan, who's the most competitive person on planet Earth, he loves golf, and he's like, thank God it exists because like after basketball, like he didn't know what to do with himself.
Needed something to compete again, huh?
Yeah, and golf, you're competing against yourself, really.
Right.
Now we'll go back on the mainstream. So golf is another one. I do like other random hobbies. Like I try and go hiking. I started to get into rucking. Rucking is just a fancy way of saying I'm going to throw a bunch of crap in a backpack and make it heavy, like 40, 50 pounds.
okay,
I'm gonna go
gotcha.
walking
Yeah.
with it. I love swimming. I try and do like calisthenics. Just anything that gets my body moving on a daily basis. It's just movement is so important, and then being outside in sunlight. Like so, I really, again, I'm building a business. I'm very competitive about it, but I'm not going to lose my physical and mental health or my family health and everything in pursuit of that.
Right.
And as a result of that, I may not get what I want. I may not get there as quickly as I want everything. But when I win, I want to win in life with my family and my health.
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I mean?
Just get the
Yeah.
dollar signs, and you have not. You're physically shot. You're
Yeah. And I just have this
beyond the
belief.
point to enjoy it, right?
Yeah, I just personally have this belief, and I don't know. I mean, just to look at a completely radical example again, I'm a small business owner, meaning like I funded myself, and everything, versus like a venture backed company like Elon.
Right.
Like we would agree, like Elon is probably the most successful person on planet Earth these days.
Yeah.
Just if you go based on like number of billion-dollar companies he's made
Yeah.
and the impact he's had and everything. When I read his book by Walter Isaacson, I don't want that life. I don't want that life. And even Elon says like people don't understand like what it's like to be me and what my mind. He's like my mind is like a storm.
Yeah.
Constant. And I was like I don't want that.
Yeah. I'll tell you that my experience is a little bit different, and just hearing what you're saying here, it's it's humbling, and then it's that reminder. You're very focused, you're very clear, you're grounded, and I started my first business in 2009, and all of a sudden developed this mania, that it kind of sounds. I don't want to say my mind is the same storm as Elon, but it's very similar. Like all night, all day.
All business people, you have to have this certain level of meaning. Like you have to have it there, right? But it ebbs and flows. And again, I'm not like, by all means, the goal here is to like maximize earnings and achieve wealth. Like like there's no other reason that I opened a business, right?
Right.
But I'm trying to figure out what that balance is.
Yeah.
Like for example, I question everything. So for example, at one point I was convinced, I like maybe I should do XYZ so I have more time and everything. And I thought, I'm like, I really don't need more time. I need to do less stuff. You know what I mean? And so like, I've kind of come up with my own, like in my head, hourly rate. And so if I have to do something and it's less than my hourly rate, I hire somebody to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like probably the simplest example, like it's easy for me to keep things tight and clean my home, but I have somebody come, a few times a month to clean the house.
Yep.
I'm not doing that, right? I'm trying to think like some other. There's some other examples where could I learn how to do this? Yes, but what people misunderstand is that your brain and your energy and body and mind and everything, it's like a battery. Every day you have a certain level of energy and it gets drained, right?
Yep.
And so like, I don't want that being spent. Bookkeeping, for example.
Yeah.
I'm a smart guy. I know how to run my own books.
Yep.
It is a huge waste of my time, huge waste of my energy. Even if it means it's just like 10 minutes a week, not doing it.
Right.
And so that's the kind of thing that I have to. I think it's important to ask.
Chris Doe, and I can't remember where he's from, but he's kind of a guy that's out there teaching different marketing strategies, and he says, work on your business or in your business.
Yeah, exactly. I want to work on I don't want to work in my business. Because at that point, you know what you've done? You've replaced your W-2 full-time job with business that you're a slave to.
Yep.
Don't want that.
Yep.
Like not interested.
Guilty right here. I'll just say it.
But it
guilty.
happens. At some point it does happen, right? Like, business is hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Yep.
And what is it? I think 99% of businesses fail within their first year, and like I don't know, some other percentage of them or a large amount of them don't even make it to year 5, right?
Right.
So you're gonna have some sacrifices. Like there are some times that I have to spend time away from my family. I can't do things, right? It's just part of it. But I think there's ways to, as long as you're conscious about it, to find ways to make up for that. So like at perfect example, my son, who's, he's a toddler, he's like 20 months old now. there's this like little gym for kids. You know, they take them and they do like acrobats and stuff and teach them to go up and down. It's a lot of fun, right?
Yep.
And he does that twice a week. One of the days he goes like in the mornings. There's another time he goes at 5 o'clock. And so I used to not go because I was like, oh, my wife will take him and everything. But I was like, what the hell am I doing at 5 o'clock? Like, am I working with full capacity in the business? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I might as well, instead of like working half-heartedly on the business where like I'm really not working that hard, by 4 o'clock I'm done.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and spend time with my son. And then on top of it, I'm like, you know, my wife needs a break. So then that's when I tell her like, hey, you hang out at home, just take it easy. I'll take him.
Yeah.
So that way I'm helping my wife out, giving her some alone time, right? I spend time with my son. I get away from the computer, right? So I think there's these levers in life that are there
on several layers.
Yeah,
there.
that you have to think about. They're there, you know.
Yep.
People make it too complicated, but again, sometimes you just have to simplify things. Like, you know, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yep.
So, you know, you can find the time as long as you're like conscious. And I think this is the key about being creative is that when you assume and start telling yourself like, you know what, I am a creative person. I can solve any problem. I will solve this thing. And if you start to believe that down in your core, then all you start seeing is opportunities, solutions everywhere.
Yeah.
That were always there.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, you triggered a thought, working on your business, not in your business. Let's go startup. Your experiences with startup and founders, which I don't know if that's a bad word to investors or not, but you know,
no, it's a good word, very positive word.
I've heard this term though, founder syndrome, and I've actually seen founders kind of swept to the side to avoid the 95% failure that we see out there in startups. Any experiences with that? And
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I'm guilty of kind of wanting to do a lot of the things that I shouldn't be doing or that somebody else could do better and cheaper than I could do. Because I think I'm saving money, but really, like you said, there's a price on every second of our life as a owner, founder, innovator.
Yeah, and like, look, with founders, it's not common. I'm very pro-founder, but not every founder should be or can be a CEO. And the reason why is that when you raise, so unlike a small business, when you raise money, you're on a clock.
That's right.
You know, because you borrowed money from people and they're expecting you to bring you a return and everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that's not just the investors, it's also the employees and everything.
That's right.
And so sometimes a founder needs to step aside so that a more capable CEO can come in and run the company and make the decisions that they're not going to be emotional about. They're going to be the best for the company.
Yep.
That being said, I mean, who should stay as a founder and who should not? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people at various times earlier on in Elon Musk's career, they said that, you know, like at Tesla, that he should have stepped aside and let a CEO.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he ended up being right.
Right.
You know, another great founder, Mark Zuckerberg over at Facebook. I think he's the only remaining founder CEO for any social media company, right?
Really?
Yeah, I think he's the only one because Twitter has somebody different. It's not the founder. Same with LinkedIn. Same with all these, right? So I'm not sure, like at what point, but like I'll put it in relation to med device companies. Usually, especially if it's a first time founder, on rare occasion, are they fit to be the CEO? I think they should be though. The reason why is because the founder sees the vision, and part of being the founder, not only to getting customers but also raising money, is that you have to embody the story.
Yeah.
And nobody does that better or sees it better or talks about it and persuades like the founder.
Yeah. Agreed.
But at some point, right, for that founder to stay there, in my personal opinion, they have to be very open to having a strong board of management team and a strong board where they take advice from. They don't have to listen to the advice all the time, but they'll follow that.
Yeah, they
right?
just need a feeder.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, like it just doesn't work out. And I'm trying to think. I know that there are plenty of great companies in medtech that have lasted for more than 5 years, where the founder has stayed as a CEO. But I can't think of any right now. You know, so it just depends. Yep. I'm not experienced enough, and to be honest with you, to really comment with a strong opinion about it. Other than the fact that it depends. Anybody who says they have a rule for this is doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's case by case.
Yeah, agreed. And I've seen it in a few startups that I've worked with. The founders were really all the guidance we needed in some cases. And then in other cases, and I'd say really probably around engineered type of companies, whether it's tech, medtech, software, whatever, that I've seen the opposite in quite a few occasions. Like the engineer in them was very strong. The visionary in them was very strong, but to be able to operationalize just...
A lot of things have to go right,
And then you mentioned the attention to investors and shareholders as well. And I think that's, something that I've seen actually overlooked by a few founders.
But and then sometimes like investors are wrong, because sometimes, like if you're talking to a VC, I mean, their thing is they're trying to get a return for their limited partners.
Right.
And so sometimes like there might be an acquisition event where they're just like, yeah, we should just do that.
Yeah.
But there's more that's leaving a lot of value and opportunity on the table. So there's plenty of companies that could have exited early.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, look, like Instagram's kind of a good example of that. Like Instagram exited for $1 billion. That's a sale. That's like the deal of the century for me, because Instagram is literally like the number one generator of revenue for like Facebook, right?
Right. Yep.
So it just depends. Again, it's these things are multi-layered, complex scenarios and situations. So I mean, I can comment on it and I have like opinion about different things, but just it depends in every situation.
So I have a 23-year-old son. And I actually was contemplating, maybe you want to come to this one. He's a young business owner. He owns koi ponds and streams. And
very cool.
He's really great at what he does. He does vaccinations for kois and all sorts of stuff, right? And
that's fascinating. That's like really cool.
Not many people do it, right?
No.
And he's a young, good-looking kid. He really... He's got.
I like that market because you're selling to essentially really rich people.
Oh yeah, I talked to him last night, and he's like, "You're going to be proud of me." And he got a new account right in Hollywood Hills, but he's like, "I got a membership to every cigar lounge in LA and Orange County," and he's just picking these clients up while he's smoking a cigar.
That's exactly.
Great. He's got it down. But,
tell him to pick up golf, and then he'll have like a monopoly in California.
But he, one thing I've been coaching him on since he was a kid is like when you start a business, just like you said, either you replace your W-2 and then you're just working for yourself, or you find a way to scale, you find a way to hire people. He's taken that advice. But what can we say? Because I promised a lot of people that when I had you here, I'd really ask the questions that would help them. Is how do you avoid that? Like you've kind of mentioned it, as far as why you're doing it in the first place. So it's maybe the purpose behind what you're doing, which usually isn't to work 24/7, right? But aside from those priorities, family, how do you avoid getting in the weeds and not being able to see a horizon, and then getting stuck, you're 65 years old and you can't retire?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I'm the right guy to be asking, because I'm barely like 2.5 years into my own business, but I guess I can comment based on what I've learned from other more established business owners and what I've seen. I think there are certain things that maybe you should get in the weeds on, right? But it should be things that are the most high leverage things in the business. So for me, what's high leverage in my business is like the kind of clients we sell to and help, and like the people that bring on the podcast, because like nobody does that. Like you can't replace me for that, right?
Yeah.
But for a bunch of other things, you can.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things like let's look at the bookkeeping example, right? Maybe hire a bookkeeper, and they do things, but they don't do it exactly the way you want it. But the point is, it gets done,
right?
And you have to look at the amount of time you're spending every day and just say, okay, like if this is the amount of time I have, what are the most high leverage things that I can do in the business that are actually going to move it forward, right? And this is where like part of it, I think, in my opinion and experience, like being a business owner is sort of a journey of self-discovery where you discover like your your weak points, your bad habits, right? And I think one of those things is like being able to relinquish control. Right.
Yep.
And part, the other, and so I don't know if I have a good answer for that aside from just like, you also have to like the numbers never lie, right? So it's like, okay, you can spend all this time on certain details and everything, but like, is your gross, is your gross going up? Yeah. Is it going up every month?
Yeah.
Or even every quarter, every year. And so like, for me, like look at, year one to year two, like my gross and net all went up significantly. Mm-hmm. And so like I had to, but in year two, I didn't work as hard as I did in year one. Okay. Even though I felt like I was and the reason why, when I looked at it, I'm like, well, how is it that I made more money, but I felt like I was all over the place and I didn't work as hard compared to year one? Well, the difference was I worked on things that were more high leverage. I was solving more expensive problems. Mm-hmm. And so my theme this year is like, what are the most expensive problems that I can solve, and just literally just focus on that.
Yeah.
Even now, I feel like I'm doing maybe a little bit too much, because all these things, they take energy from you.
Oh yeah.
Right?
If you're not focused on something, then you can't.
Yeah. And so like for example,
not gonna accomplish it.
Yeah. So like I have a guy who helps me, who makes all the video clips for my podcast, who publishes it for me, all these things. Sometimes things happen where it's not exactly the way I want, and sometimes mistakes happen, right? But I'm willing to pay that price. And again, actually, do you mind if I dive into this a little bit?
Not at all.
This is a very interesting topic. Okay, so I have this guy who's working for me, right? Great guy. He's extremely talented, super sharp. He makes like all the videos, amazing videos you see and everything. This is all this one guy. Okay. And he, we publish 2 to 3 times a week. We have an aggressive publishing calendar. Okay. In the last couple of weeks, we've had some things happen. Somebody's name was misspelled. Something, there's something in a podcast, there's a blank space, right? Like things that really ticked me off. It's very easy for me to blame this guy and be like, man, this guy, like I'm paying him. He's not an employee. He's a vendor. He should have been on top of this everything. That's easy to do.
Yeah.
The harder thing to do is for me to ask the question of like, well, why did this happen? How do I prevent it? The reason it happened is that I don't have any SOPs on around this process. There's not a system. There's not a quality control thing and everything. And so if it's gonna be like that, these things are gonna happen. So then I looked at it as like, you know what? This is actually my fault. So what am I doing to correct that is for me to, I hired somebody who's going to be like kind of a high skilled assistant who's going to do marketing sales. The first task I'm having this person do is like, hey, I need you to hold my hand to the fire and literally force me, because I don't like doing it and I avoid it, is I need to put more processes down.
Yeah.
We need to come up with some SOPs, and we have a checklist, including like something happened today. The guy texted me. He's like, hey, we have an episode coming out. Can we get this thing? And I was like, no, I forgot to do that. I was like, hey, let's put that in the SOP so that even I have to go through and check off each thing as we do it, because that's the only way we do it. And I think, again, the thing about entrepreneurship is that it's a journey of self-discovery where you realize like, oh, you know what? I'm, not really good at this. And that's okay. But that's where, again, this is my personal opinion. You got to have a business with a big enough dream that other people's dreams can live in it.
That's right.
They can make good money and everything, and you relinquish control and let those people do what they got to do, because they're like, hey, I want everything to go right because my little dream is living in the dream of this business, and this business is growing, making more money. So I just want to make sure everything goes well.
Yeah. It reminds me of a saying that when I teach classes, the things that you learn are not for you, right? And it's like when you're in your business, like you know how to do it, you know what you want, but if you don't share it in the proper format with others, like through an SOP, it's not going to do any good for your business, right?
Yeah, and it's a risk. It's a risk because because like something happens, this guy changes his mind. He's like, hey, I want to do XYZ now in my life. Like I just lost that guy. So like, how do we replace that?
Something
quickly?
That's uniform, something that's documented, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I don't know if success leaves clues, right? So like all the problems I'm going through, like there have been millions of businesses that have gone through the same thing, and sometimes it takes like picking up a book, going and talking. I think the other thing is that enough people don't, it's not just mentorship, but I think not enough people go out of their way to go meet other business owners. And, like I'm part of an entrepreneurial mastermind I pay for. Yeah.
I saw that. going to actually ask you, like, how do you get involved? It's something that I've shared with some of my partners is like, I need to go out and invest in myself.
Yeah, it's
I
the
need
best
to be
investment you'll make.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to be, like I said, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. And it's
Yeah.
like high priority in my life right now. I want to kind of move forward into some of the psychology that we talked about. And, one thing that I really appreciated, and I think I've probably said it even to Paco a few times, is like, how do we make something go viral? And then I watched one of your posts, and it's like, do you want to be viral, or do you want, which is like one event that leads to this web, or do you want to have a web that leads to viral? And I think you called it the networking effect.
Yeah, the network effect. That's right. So, not my term. I wish it was. So essentially, so the question is, how do you make something go viral? Well, I don't know. So virality means that one thing happens and another thing happens, right? Versus a network effect, right? You're getting plugged into a network, okay? And you're doing activities over a certain span of time through that network that increases the chances that something's going to go viral. So, for example, a great example of a virality is you make a video, you post it, and you optimize the SEO, all these things, and hope it goes viral. A network effect is you post a video a week, you engage with the comments, you grow your network and everything, and so through that network, there is an effect that ends up happening, where little by little you start getting more traction and everything, and then one day, like magic, like something goes viral. That's really what a network effect is. But virality can be engineered. The reason why I don't like that, or I don't focus on, is that a lot of time virality has to do with luck. It has to do with a trending topic, something controversial, something that's provocative, all these different things. And so I know those levers to pull on. Yeah. But again, at the end of the day, it also depends. Like, I'm not trying to be like some random YouTuber and stuff.
It's not sticky.
Yeah, exactly. I'm dealing with very astute and savvy business people who don't really care for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it just depends. But what I think was, it's not necessarily virality that you want. I don't know. Based on what I know about you, I don't think you want virality.
Well, I speak out of ignorance when I say that, because I understand that, really the community, the network, the compound nature of relationships, and something that I'm learning a little bit more about now is just brand loyalty, and I don't think that comes through a viral post or.
Let me put it this way. So you listen to other podcasts? Who are the most which podcasters or podcasts do you respect the most? Where you're like, man, I want a podcast like that.
Gosh, well, Paco's got a really great podcast, actually.
Okay.
I don't know if you got a chance to see his.
I've not seen it. I'll have to check it out.
Covered a lot of topics. I think, as with everybody, I really enjoyed Joe Rogan because he's got a sense of humor.
Okay, let's go with Joe Rogan.
And then it's actually talking about serious topics.
What was the last viral episode of Joe Rogan? I don't remember.
I couldn't say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe like when
all of them are.
Yeah, like maybe when he had Elon Musk on, right? So okay, Elon Musk coming on smoking pot. That was a viral moment.
That's right. Yeah.
But did he plan that, or is Joe Rogan literally recording 3 to 4 of these podcasts a week, and through that effect?
I just told him that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just before you got here.
Oh really? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it makes sense. And what does that do? I mean, from the marketing aspect, you have that continuity, you have that cadence or that frequency that is more frequent than what we're doing right now. But when you build that community, the brand loyalty aspect of it. So some of that is marketed, and then some of that is like merit based on what your product and what your services are, right?
Yeah, and I think like the other thing when you think about content is, I mean, a lot of it is exposure to a network. So like, for example, like your show is getting exposure to a bunch of new people now just because of me being on here and me promoting it to my network.
Yeah.
So you do enough of those, right? And that's when you start developing, you'll end up having some kind of a network effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then at some point, like you might have a viral mode. Like I think for me, if my show had some level of virality, it wasn't viral, but probably the most one of the more engaged content is that Martin Shkreli, the farmer bro, who's a super sharp guy, by the way, super sharp guy, And I actually agree with a lot of his perspectives on things. Like I had him on my show like over the summer, and the reason why that happened is because I had done enough episodes. I gotten to a certain point that when he looked at the show, he's like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is an actual like podcast on medtech. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, you've had some really cool speakers on your podcast, and even in some of your shorts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Very inspiring people. One of them that caught me was the Rick Barnett. And
do you know Rick Barnett? Or
well, I just
follow him?
I watched his shorts that you posted, and I kind of looked into him a little bit. But I really, again, kind of wanting to understand the DNA, or I would say maybe the stereotypical DNA of med device sales, med device marketing, business development. I started perusing, and
yeah, I have a series coming up that on one of the like original like medtech companies that like a lot of this stuff, the razor blade model, all this came from this one place, and that's U.S. Surgical. So I'm interviewing some heavyweight people from that organization. A lot of these people are now CEOs at other companies and stuff. But those episodes will probably release maybe in the fall.
Oh, very cool.
So keep an eye out for the U.S.
Definitely
Surgical
will.
series. You'll love that.
I'm in your algorithm, man, for sure. Like,
even non-med device people will find value in that.
So something that caught me about one of the things Rick Barnett said, and like I said, bandwidth being part of that stereotypical or forethought DNA of a med device, moral compass, bandwidth, high energy, and I'm looking at these and I was like, I got the moral compass side. I feel good. I feel bandwidth, like I'm intellectually curious, and the people I'm hiring also looking for those same sort of people. High energy. I've been accused of being low energy, and I probably am low energy when it comes to like my presence. Right, I'm very serious. I'm not very animated. I don't like to dance or sing or be noticed too often.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know, but it's I noticed that it was one of the 3 pillars for Rick. What are your thoughts? What are the most important DNA to somebody that was in your field, somebody that's in the field that I'm getting in now as a director of clinical training support in the sales division, right? Like what is the making
of a salesperson? Yeah. I think there's a few things. Number one, most importantly, is that salesperson really needs to know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
There's too many salespeople that rely on personality and charisma and everything. Those are the worst salespeople. That's all they got.
I don't need to ask that then, because I was going to say, what about charisma? Okay, so perfect.
Let me tell you, me personally, I get wary if I talk to a salesperson, they get on, they're super animated and everything. Like immediately, I'm like, this person's trying to pull a number on me. I don't like it. So really knowing what they're talking about, and that's where the consultative sale comes into place. And this is where like knowing who you're talking to and the questions you can ask them, because the quality of questions you ask also puts you in a hierarchy, right? And there's a way of asking certain questions where, when you talk to somebody, like if somebody comes to talk to me, I'm already sizing them up. Like, does this person know like what they're talking about, everything?
Yeah.
And based on the question they ask and how they frame it, immediately puts them in my mind in a category. This happens to everybody, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So knowing what you're talking about, knowing the customer's problems inside and out, knowing your product inside and out, the solutions, everything, being really sharp on that. That's gonna be number one.
Yep.
I think the second thing is actually knowing how to manage a deal, right? So knowing when the right time is to put pressure on the customer to move forward, right?
Yep.
When should you give them a break, right? When should that's another thing. I think the third thing, is just persistence. Because sales, a lot of sales, it has to just do with the follow-up. It's not like complicated and it's not rocket science, you know?
Yeah.
But I think those are the most, probably important things. And I think the best salespeople know how to do all of those really, really well. I mean, look, like the best salespeople that I know, they're not, super like, I mean, they are charismatic, but they're not like smiling and like jumping up and down. Hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Like I don't like that at all.
Let me ask you. So I think we're aligned, and it's really validated. Okay, I'm okay.
You're more than okay, man.
When I talk about certain things like dialysis, I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I've lived in it since I was a child. with a personal experience, family member, ended up as a professional, as a clinical person, then a biomedical, then water specialist, and admin, So I've been kind of through any role, with the exception of a nurse or a doctor. So I know the workflows, the pain points.
You probably know it better, in my opinion, better than a doctor because you lived it, you've done it for a while. Like from a sales standpoint, you're the ideal salesperson when it comes to something dialysis related.
Well, you know, I often find myself, and I've said this on a few episodes, that I find myself feeling imposter because I've ran across the J&Js and the Kimberly Clarks and, you know, the Edward and like these different sales reps and marketing people that I just feel like I'm in a foreign land, right? But when we talk about selling or educating on the type of device that I'm working with, there's nobody better.
Yeah.
Like, and I've been living that for my whole life, right? So when you talk about the bandwidth or the actual knowledge base, I feel good about that. The moral compass, like Paco's known me a long time, and I started my first business really just wanting to help, like you said, help one person at a time to be able to provide the level of care that I know I could give. And it's like, well, I'm only one person, so when I teach people, now I feel like I'm part of the care of others, right? And it turned into like thousands of students now and thousands of employees in different organizations. It's a really strong feeling for me, but it's really about helping patients get the care they need. In dialysis, that care equates to them staying alive. And then it's like, just like you and me, we do what we do, not because we want to work 24/7, but because we have somebody we love or memories we want to make, things like this. So it all translated really well for me. I'm missing the high energy. I'm missing that one. And
I don't think you need to have it all the time, to be honest with you. I mean, it just depends. It depends. I think you can exude high energy based on your passion and interest for the subject without having to, you know, feel like you're jumping out of the seat.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm fluffy enough. I've been to like the financial services meetings and stuff, and like, I can't do that, right? I can't do it. What about the Rolodex?
What about it?
Like, how important is that for, you mentioned kind of the age group of like a lot of your viewers.
Like having a Rolodex?
Yeah.
I don't think it's important. I think a great salesperson knows how to go and build a market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I try to be like a little bit down to earth and humble about things, but I will say that as a salesperson, I have the utmost confidence that you can take me like a special ops person and parachute me into any medtech company today in any specialty, and I will be able to be successful in it. Assuming that the product is not a piece of crap,
right? Yeah,
you know, like there's no that's one piece of advice. I guess
that's the big question.
Really evaluate the product because like don't assume that just on your you have to believe in the product, right? The Rolodex is important, but I think that too many people rely on that too much, you know? And this is especially in the startup world. Like you have a Rolodex, sometimes certain people, even though they're going to buy your product, that doesn't mean that you sell to them. You know, the idea of customer success is important. So for example, you know, let's just take MedDevice out of this. You know, if you look at some of the companies that are in that mastermind with me, they sell like coaching services or marketing agency services and everything. Just because you can go and land, let's say, a big celebrity, right? If they don't match your client criteria, right, of what a perfect client looks like, maybe it's great you get them for a few months, but then they're going to churn.
Yeah.
And you're not going to, you're going to lose that opportunity, but also you're not going to have any good results, all these different things. So really evaluating the customer you're selling to, right? Because that's the other thing is that a salesperson, a great salesperson is somebody who is solving a problem.
Yeah.
So part of that is identifying, does this person actually have this problem that our thing solves?
Can solve, yep.
And then are they willing to solve that problem, right? Because again, a lot of salespeople, let's look at the medical device world, they're tasked to sell something, right? They go and sell a piece of device to a hospital and everything, but then they don't have full buy-in from, let's say, a doctor or anything. So that device is sitting there, and after a few months, collecting dust.
Yep.
That's not good for that company. It's not good for that market, you know, and for a variety of things. And not to mention, that salesperson has done a disservice to that surgeon because the doctor isn't thinking sometimes about business implications. So now that doctor, advocated for that device, gets it, it's not being used a lot and everything. You think that doctor is going to get the hospital to buy another thing that they want when they're like, oh, wait, didn't this guy or gal recommend this device and like they're not using the same with them? Like, we're not going to give them more money.
Yeah.
So the sale is, selling is more complicated than you think. Oftentimes, and I think that these considerations have to be taken into account. Also, that has to be aligned with the company incentives, because if the company's like, we don't care about this, like just sell. Right. The salesperson's going to do what they're told. Yeah. Right. This is why, as a company, you have to put these parameters into place where it's like, hey, like we want to qualify these people. Yeah, we want to hit quota and everything, but we would rather have 3 new customers who are all in on the product, they're going to use everything, versus 10 who don't care. And they're just like, whatever.
That's a great point there. So capital equipment, capital with an annuity to it.
Yeah, and this is more capital versus like if you're selling, some disposable and everything. Yeah. Like, you're not going to get like people jumping out of their chairs for like a disposable, but like there's different aspects to sales.
Well, in your experience with the razor blades, what's the ideal model, or have you worked with different models? Have you worked where capital sales is responsible for the annuity as well? Yeah. Or maybe it's a hybrid type of role between sales and training?
Yeah, I think me personally, I think sales needs to be tied more into with customer success, so that they don't just sell and bounce. They're on the hook a little bit. Yep. The other thing is like hospitals they're not stupid. They're being like, how many standalone hospitals do you know of? I don't know many. Yeah, not many. So they're owned by like large health systems. Yeah. Some of them are run by private equity groups. So they're constantly looking at their budget and where they're spending money. Yep. And so I think there needs to be some more business model innovation. So sometimes, like at least the valuation of these companies isn't hinged on how much capital they sell. It's hinged on how much placement they have and utilization they got. Yeah, absolutely. It's just like taking the SaaS model. Yep. It's monthly recurring revenue, or if anything, annual recurring revenue. Yeah. And so I think like part of this is making a easier capital purchase for hospitals, and maybe making a more friendlier service type fee that includes consumables, right? So some hospitals, they don't want to pay a service fee and all these different things and everything. So maybe you do like surgery as a service or something. Gotcha. So every month you have like your consumables, you have your service fee, your et cetera. And it's on a scale based on how much you use. If you don't use the technology that month, you're not getting billed for anything. Right. So you have to like pricing. We can have a whole conversation about pricing, but like pricing is really important. You have to understand what is the market willing to tolerate.
Tolerance, yeah.
Yeah, and like what's sustainable over the long term. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to ask you. You mentioned a lot of robotic experience, and you don't have to give me an exact range here, but like, what are the ticket sizes on these robots?
Oh no, I can give you a ticket size. So like, if you look at a lot of the robots out there today, like a Da Vinci system, right? Da Vinci's, I think they're somewhere in the ballpark. I think like 1 or 2 mil. They're somewhere in there, right? Wow. Yeah. Some of the Mazor system, when we were selling it, it was $1 million robot, right? And then that's not including
like a real estate agent, huh?
So yeah. It's so this stuff isn't cheap, But there are other smaller robotic systems that they'll go for like $200,000 to $300,000, $400,000. So it just depends. Wow. It just depends. Incredible. And I think again, this is where like you have to figure out like from your business model, like what's going to be most important for your business from a valuation standpoint, and then what's going to be important in terms of revenue. Like me personally, if I was running a device company these days, I would be a lot more interested in like having a lower ticket piece of capital equipment to get in and secure a contract and then have recurring revenue coming in. Right. You know what I mean?
Through annuity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about these. You mentioned surgeons. So I guess you have a lot of OR surgery, robotics, but let's just, partners, clients, new device, maybe a clinical trial device, maybe have some hiccups, any experiences with that, and then having, people ticked off, and
that happens all the time. That's part of being in a Medtech startup is like, that's going to happen, which is why, I mentioned earlier, it's very important to figure out who your early adopters are and who you should sell to early on. Because there are some people who are more mainstream customers. They want a product that works well, is not going to have any hiccups and everything.
Good point.
Those are terrible people to have early. There's some people who are early adopters. They're like, hey, like your baby's ugly.
They're
it's okay, but I'll work with you, and so that's super important.
Well, let's go to the worst case scenario. You get into a relationship with somebody that expects 100%. Maybe they didn't represent that up front, but now you're in, and I don't know, a button's not the right color, or the font size is not the right size, whatever it is. They've got a major complaint. They're ticked off about it. I've seen some advice from you on this, but like, how do you deal with these folks? Because I thought it was just such common sense, but you really gave a granular detail to this.
Yeah. So it depends on the scenario, but like in the case that you saw on Instagram, like my thing is like when you have an angry customer, depending on the situation, but like most of the time, if they're angry, you should not be backpedaling. You should find a way to get more angry about the situation than them, so that you validate their feelings. That's the first thing, right?
By the way, you helped in my marriage too with that one.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know it works.
Okay,
it works.
yeah.
Because if anything, when somebody's angry, the first thing you want to do is feel validated.
Yeah.
The more that somebody tries to calm them down, it's like they just get more angry. So the best thing is just to get more angry than them about it, right? And probably like perfect example of this is like I heard this story. This guy was running like a tailor, like a clothing store. This lady comes in and she's pissed. She's like, this button came off. So the owner heard about it. He came out. He's like, Miss Smith, I'm so sorry. Who sold you this coat? Whoever that is, we're going to fire them. This is unacceptable. And she's like, oh, well, you don't know. He's like, no, this is unacceptable. And the guy was like livid. He's like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this and I'm going to figure it out. He's like, I'm going to figure out who that is and they're going to get fired. He's like, but do you have your coat on you? And she's like, yeah. She's like, please give me 5 minutes. Let me go fix this. Goes to the back, fix it, comes out, and she's so happy and everything was fine.
She said, don't fire him, probably.
Yeah, because it's validated.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. But in the case of like, let's say you sell some surgical equipment and you have some big issues that happen. Hospitals pissed, surgeons pissed and everything. You have to have it's just like in life, in a marriage or any relationship, you have to have a very open discussion and say, hey, like, look, we messed up. We're not trying to sugarcoat that or anything. We royally messed up. What was done was wrong. We're going to try and fix it, right? How do we do that? Like, it's just having open conversation and communication. I don't think I don't feel that there's any difference in business communication negotiation compared to, let's say, having that same communication with your spouse or friend or anything, right?
Yep.
When something like you're hanging out with your boys, your buddy screws up. What do you want your buddy to do? To just own up to him and be like, hey man, that I messed up big time. This is what I did wrong. This is at the time, this is what I was thinking, but you know what? I was wrong. How do I make this up for you? Like that's what you want. That's what anybody wants.
So I watched that, and about a week later, I was working with a CRM account executive, and there were, the CRM was the single source of truth, right? And supposed to be the solve all for the business that I plugged it in.
It never is.
Oh no, integration specialist, and 6 months down the line.
You want to tell me which CRM it is?
It's Salesforce.
Oh, Salesforce? Okay.
That was Salesforce. So
everybody buys Salesforce expecting it to do something, and then they realize,
gosh.
It doesn't, and we got to hire like an admin. Like that's why they have the biggest building in San Francisco.
Yes, we got the integration specialist. We're working, and it's like, well, you got to buy this, and add on. So I called him. I was like, I got to tell you, I'm pissed. This is not the way that you all represented it to me. It's a big price tag already, and now I'm having to add features through other softwares. So I was like, I'm getting to the point where, I know I've got a contract with y'all, but you might have to sue me because I'm just like, this is not, it's like, oh, I would be even madder than you. And he really, just like what you say, he owned it. He was like, you're supposed to be further along on this. I'm going to start working with the integration specialist and I'm going to get a ticket started and you're going to have an answer by this day. And I'm surprised you're so calm. And I was like, I felt fluffed because I had just watched.
You just watched my thing.
Yeah, so I was like,
even though you knew,
me,
but you knew what was going on, but it still made you feel better.
It did,
right?
It
Yeah,
did.
that's the purpose.
And he followed up with it, just like your person did. He followed up with it. we got a resolve from the engineering side of Salesforce. They worked with our integration. They took care of it.
Yeah, and like this goes back to a very simple. It's such a simple lesson of business, but people forget. At the end of the day, you're being paid to achieve a certain result or outcome for a customer.
Right.
If you're not helping them achieve that outcome or result, nothing else matters. And this is specific for like agency owners, who are like our service providers, right? At the end of the day, like when I engage a company and I tell them, we're going to get we're going to help you get XYZ result, right? Doesn't matter reports or this thing was done, that they don't give a damn how hard you work. All they care about is the result.
That's right.
There's some customers I get remarkable results for.
Yeah.
And I work, we work on it maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, the results are all that matters. You don't need a fancy slide deck and everything.
Yeah.
It's like, here are the results.
Yeah.
Here's the progress. That's it.
Yep.
It's that simple. And I think personally, that has served me well with a lot of people. I'm very grateful, and at least I feel like I can say this confidently, that I have a good reputation in my industry. I have a good reputation with people. This is why, like at LSI, like you saw me there.
Yep.
And part of the reason why is that I work really, really hard to stick by my word and deliver the results as quickly and as efficiently as I can. If it's not done, I'm the first one to say that, these are the problems that are happening, right?
Yeah.
I prefer to be the hardest grader on myself, not, a client or when I was an employee, a boss or something. Like I wanted to hold myself to the highest standard.
Yeah.
And that's what the game of life is results. Same thing with a marriage. It's like, like my wife, like I love my wife, but like it doesn't matter if I work really hard at this thing or whatever thing. If I'm not being a good dad or a good husband, like I'm like, that's the result. Like there's no way around it. And she gives me a lot of like slack on that, but like I'll call myself out before she does, and I'm like, I don't think I've been a good dad this week because I haven't done X. And she's like, no, but you're working. I'm like, that's not an excuse. I'm like, it is what it is, right?
It sounds like a tactic.
No. This like
Keeping yourself from getting in trouble, man.
No, yeah, but you know what? Like
But no, yeah.
But part of this is like you just start to embody it, and sometimes it's tactical. But then with the people you're close with, like you can't. There's no hiding. You cannot hide.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. There's no hiding.
Yeah, you're just being transparent.
Yeah,
honest.
exactly.
Yep.
And the important thing is action. Right? Do you correct the action? Because if you're all talk, that's where people get in trouble.
Yes.
Right. It's like, and you've been in the game long enough to know the kind of person I'm talking about.
Yep. Oh,
right.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like they all they do is talk.
Yep. Got to execute on what you say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Like I'll give you a perfect example. There was a period where, my wife was taking care of the kid a lot and everything, and she was sleeping with him. I was sleeping in a separate because I have bad sleep to begin with. And she wanted like some help, but like didn't ask for it, and I can see that she needed it, right? And it finally happened where. I think I was like out of town or something, and she just talked to me. She's like, it's kind of like a lot like when you leave me like that, right? And so she told me this, and I call myself. I'm like, you're absolutely right. Like I think I may have taken it for granted and was taking advantage of the fact that you were saying you'll take care of the kid and everything, and granted I had my own stress and everything, but there's no excuse for that. So what do? Immediately, I changed my act up, like started helping her more. There's some nights where I would, like, for example, when the weekend comes, like Friday, I would wake up in the middle of the night, go take care of the kid, all these things. And she noticed immediately. She's like, you changed like immediately. And I think that's like probably one of the skills I really made sure to develop over the years is when I notice that something is wrong and I have to change, that I take I treat it like life or death. I take radical action to change immediately. Yep. And aside from the fact that that's helped me a lot in my life, because God knows I screwed up a lot of things in my past, and I've made my own mistakes, and I had to grow from that. But it also served to develop a lot of respect from people.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I've done a lot of things. The one thing that I think that many people that I've worked with or friends of mine can tell you is like, hey, when Omar knows that something needs to get done or needs to be improved on, like he will change and take action immediately on it.
Yeah.
And I try my best.
Like I've said it a few times here as well with some other guests, but I think talking about businesses and startups, and it's like I heard it somewhere along the way that good ideas take massive action, but what I'm hearing from you is like important things take massive action, and it's.
I'm all about that action, man.
It reminds me of a funny, I don't know if it was a meme or something I saw on Instagram recently, but it was a guy that said, there are, and no disrespect, he said there are women that go see their men drive 8 hours to the penitentiary every week. Your girlfriend lives down the street and she won't come see you. So it's
true.
like, it's like
true,
the
man.
things that are important, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll drive, you'll fly, you'll swim, you'll struggle.
Yeah.
But
there are no excuse. Yeah, exactly.
If it's not important, if it's a convenience, you won't even make the time right up the street.
A lot of times, actually not a lot of times, most of the times, I don't care what people say. I want to see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
People talk a lot. I want to see the actions.
So you met my wife.
Yes.
She's a silent warrior, but that's exactly her. She doesn't care much about verbalizing things. Like even, we've had conversations. We've been together 16 years. 16 years. And she's not one that's like, every day, like all day, like I love you and stuff like this, but she shows it through her action. She's not like a big hugger or kisser, right? She's going to make sure, for me, she keeps me in my office and she keeps me fed.
But it's all about that action, man.
Yeah.
It's all about that action. Like, I think for a lot of things in life.
Agreed. And when we talk about profession, starting businesses, one of the things that I had to, I think, get past was not everybody believes the way I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And then going into, after starting my own business, into consultancy and into roles in medical device, I would have never taken a role if I didn't believe, first of all, right? So you mentioned like a product, and as long as it's not a piece of crap, right? Well, that's the first, right? Is you got to have the belief in the product that you're the service, the business that you're going to work with. But one thing I'm starting to see now is also that in building a team, that not everybody comes in with that same belief. Sometimes it is just, there's a nice, appealing posting for a job, right? People
need jobs, yeah.
It's a vertical advancement for me.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that like we have to also, that's like our first sale, is our team. Whether it's on sales side or the support side, we've got to get that same belief from them. Mm-hmm. What have you done in your career with the teams that you've built, or maybe even the clients that you have, to get to the point where that belief is concrete enough for them to express, to tell the story? Like we said, the founder, nobody tells it like the founder, because they live and breathe it, right? They believe in it.
I try to buy as is, So like in previous companies, like whether it comes to hiring or anything else, like you want to get somebody from the beginning who expresses those same values and characteristics. And once they're in the organization is a forcing function to amplify those values and characteristics. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, when somebody's being hired for the Army, right? You look for certain characteristics and everything, and maybe like on a 0 to 10 scale, like somebody is like at a 6 or 7 in terms of like characteristics of what it takes to be a great soldier. Well, once they get into the organization, the forcing function of that organization, their peers and everything, will get them from a 6 to a 10. Because that's why they say culture is really important. The culture of the organization we'll get that person there.
Yep.
But it's very difficult to get somebody from like, and these are arbitrary numbers, from like a 2 to a 10.
Right.
You know, so like that's why like for me, you like you either got it or you don't.
So you shoot
know?
for the high number
Yeah,
that
and-
is going to move to
and I
the
don't- and-
10 through the culture.
Yeah, and resumes, you know, they help, but people can
Yeah.
hide in resume. That's why
That's right.
I want to talk to the person.
Yeah.
So like for example, there's this person that I just hired who's, you know, going to be helping me with like some op stuff and everything. You know, one of the things I asked her, I was like, hey, look, like, and I just, and this is kind of persuasion. So I told her, I was like, look, I already like you a lot. Like you're in, because I went through an agency, they found a bunch of people and they said, this is the one person, like, it's not. So I was like, yeah, I was like, look, I like you. I was like, it's already done. I was like, so I don't want to hear like the answer that's going to make me, yeah. I was like, what's the example of a project that you worked on, a passion project, just something you were really interested in that you spent in like numerous amount of hours on? Like you didn't even go up and go to the bathroom. You didn't go, you know, like I'm looking for like, what was something that you were obsessed over, right? And she told me, and it was a really good story, and I liked it, right? Because I want people like that. I don't need that person to work like that on my business. You know why? She's not the business owner. So there's no reason for her to ever work as hard as I do.
Yeah.
Right? Unless I'm going to pay her
Yep.
that amount of cash and equity.
Yeah. Focus
You know,
on what.
Yeah, this is
your
the other
domain
dumb
is.
thing that I think startup founders they do is that they expect everybody to work as hard as them. Well, you want people to work as hard as you.
Guilty
give
again.
Them, yeah, give them the
Guilty
money
again.
and the equity, and then they'll work that hard.
That's
if
right.
not, like
Yeah.
you can't expect. Yeah.
Yep.
But you can. What you can do is put people in a position to really appreciate what they do for work, take pride in it,
Yeah.
and then make sure that their output is something that they're proud of, right?
Right.
And I think that on the persuasive side, if you want to get the best out of an employee, you can be hard on them, but tell them who you want to be. Like you can be hard on them and be like, look, you kind of messed up here. You should have done this and everything. And I know you can't do that because like I see a lot of potential in you. I know you're really talented and everything. Like this is not reflective of your work. This
Right.
is like not you.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, it's a
This is-
challenge.
yeah. And so because it's easy. It's easy to be hard. It's easy to be hard on people and beat down on them and everything and crack the whip. Sometimes you got to do that, by the way.
Yep.
But for the most part, you know, whether it's in business or in life, you know, we have children, you know, we have spouse and everything. Most of the time, you don't like. There's better, more effective, and creative ways of getting the message across and getting that person to change their behavior.
Yeah.
Than cracking the whip.
Yeah. Agreed.
You know?
Agreed. We're coming up on a lengthy podcast here. I'll close with a final thought.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, it's a question for final thought.
Yeah, totally.
So, you know, I like to talk to guests at the end of the episode. What can you share? What are the gems, right? And we talked about your son, right? And one day maybe speaking at LSI, maybe bringing a tech to LSI, right?
That'd be a trip, man.
I mean, it would, right? And I've had the same sort of thoughts of my children. I have 4. So, you know, one day one of them will be as passionate about dialysis for some reason. Like I'm so passionate about it. Like I live and breathe it. One is starting to cling on, right? But nobody's really dove head first yet. I talked to a guest last week and I said, you know, it's a tattoo artist actually.
Yeah, I saw that one.
What if your child wanted to get, you know, full back done up, right? So you know, I'll kind of leave it at 2-part is, you know, what's that vision and what if it doesn't go your way? And then second, you know, what would you say to your son now? Because you mentioned your father and you didn't go the route that was like designed maybe. What would you say to your son today as far as like, this is your world. Like you get to find your place, right? Like what's your best advice for your son, for my daughter, you know, what's same thing. What's your advice to them on finding their place in the world, whether it's leveraging what we have built already, or it's building their own. Like my son did something completely different, right? Koi ponds and streams, right?
Yeah.
What's your best advice for young people, or those who are trying to make a change and do find their place in the world, maybe not so young?
I told you brevity's not my thing, so I know it's a long podcast.
Okay.
So final thought, but it won't be a short answer. So you asked a couple of questions. So the first part is like, what if it doesn't go as designed and everything? I don't have anything designed. I think at least from my look, you're way more experienced than me. You have 4 kids. Like I have a toddler, but just from what I've seen from other parents, of course, a lot of the stuff that I've read and things I've reflected on is that being a parent is like, I think very much like being a coach. Like all you can do is just coach your children to the best of your abilities, instill them with the right values and filters and views of the world. And then at that point, it's out of your hands.
That's right.
Like there's only so much you can do, right?
It's sooner than later too, man. Like all of a sudden
it goes fast.
They're little people, not just your kid anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I talk about this with my wife all the time, like, because my son is very strong-minded, very curious and sharp and tough, And so we always talk about like, what do you think he's going to be and everything. I would be lying if I said, I don't care what my son's going to be and everything. I do care. But what I care most about is that I don't care, if he's going to be like, an entrepreneur or something, like, yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. But if he wanted to be, an engineer, right? Or an artist or, a cook, whatever. I don't care what it is. What I demand, the one thing I demand is that you commit to it and you be the absolute best. Like you commit to this craft. Like you lose yourself in it, right? And you pursue excellence, Like you don't dilly-dally or screw around. That's the thing that I absolutely demand. And the way that I get there is just through not just teaching, but forcing. Some people have a problem when I say, I'm going to force my kid to do things. And the reason why is that, like, I'm going to force my kid to eat healthy. I'm going to force my kid to exercise. I'm going to force my kid to have manners. I'm going to force my kid to all these. Because if I don't, the path of least resistance is that my kid's going to eat candy whenever they want. They're going to watch TV. They're going to do all these things and everything. So I don't believe in this nonsense today that we see, about like sort of hands-off parenting. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
You have to instill.
That would
these
be
things.
4-hour podcast.
That's another podcast.
4-hour one.
episode.
Yeah, exactly. That's another
I
podcast.
agree to that.
That's another podcast episode. So that's that's how I feel about my children. Now to answer the second part, and actually maybe I'm doing a good job of being brief on this, which is good. my advice, you said, to like young people, it's the same thing which is if you're going to do something, pursue it like that. Like don't take anything in life for granted. Like if you're given a job as a junior sales associate and all your job is to sit on your butt and smile and down and everything, get so good at that you're undeniable, right? For example, when I was, and like this is a random example, when I started out in my career, I was in medical sales. I studied a lot. I did all these things and everything, and finally I was given the opportunity to be a U.S. marketing manager. So the first thing I was given, there's 2 things, which one of them I hated, which is one was conferences. So doing the booths and everything, right? That's one. And the other one is our robotic system had to be shipped around the country for labs and everything. So I had to do logistics. And I remember thinking, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I want to do marketing. Why am I dealing with trucking company?
Yeah.
But I remember thinking back then, I was like, you know what? I remember how much I cried when I left medical school and I wanted to get hired by a company. And people said, oh, you're not going to get hired and everything. And now I'm here. I got the thing that I want.
Yeah.
And so what I did was, for the conference side, I went and studied, how do they design parks? How do they design billboards? I learned, like, I can tell you so many details that no one ever thinks about when it comes to a booth, the way you stand there, the way you touch a product, everything that will blow your mind because I committed myself to that. And the logistics side and the trucking side, I started studying, like, how do large companies think about logistics, how they ship things, everything. And I think, like, I started keeping my own Excel spreadsheets to see like the decision that I'm making, how much money I save. And I think by the end of the year, I'd saved the company like something like $500,000 based on decisions I was making on just how we ship the robot, like the days we do and everything.
I love that.
So the point is that especially for young people now, everybody wants to make a lot of money. Everybody wants to be, I want to be the VP and make all these decisions. You know what? Show that you can make simple decisions really, really well.
Right.
And go for and look for things where you can own responsibility. There's always in life especially early in career, there's a long line of people who want to get credit. There's not a long line of people who want to take on responsibility.
You're right. You're right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right?
Amen.
Amen.
Yep.
And so that's my big thing that I tell young people. And just like a hint, on All Hail Medical Sales, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me that they want, like, oh, I want to get your mentorship. Oh, do you do private coaching? Can I pay you and everything? And like a lot of times I have a filter of like, I'll give them books to read. I'll recommend them. And I want to see them like, are they going to do it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That's it. So earlier in your career, I would say like, commit yourself to small tasks, perfect them, be diligent in your work, be coachable, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing, like it's really a skill, but it's so simple. When you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Like come hell or high water.
Yeah.
Do it. Be the person that delivers.
Yeah. Yep.
I think like simple things like that, that kind of opens up the world to you, right? And it a lot of times just like patience,
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
I mean, I have like idea. I can't give advice at all. I have ideas, and these are sort of my ideas because I'm still figuring it out myself.
Well, I gotta tell you. So I think you've said it a couple of times that, maybe I'm older than you, but I don't know that I've been around more. I've been in certain areas like healthcare, right? I have a master's in healthcare administration and education, right? When you talk about emotion and persuasion, that's not something that I've studied. So my immediate response to like a problem is like plan of correction, or what's the deficiency? What's the plan of correction? That's kind of my mentation, right? And hearing that there's, actual people skills that is not just, it's not natural. All of it, some of it is actually, you have to study, the psyche, right?
Yeah. None of the stuff that I do is natural. I mean, you have to, it takes practice. It takes, time,
Yep.
and curiosity. I think when you're aggressive, when you're intellectually curious,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I think that it takes you a long way.
So, as a rebut, I love what you said. I think that you're on point with that advice to young people and the way that you think about your child as well. But what I heard in the forcing is, I think, an indirect force to doing what you're passionate about as well. And when you say be the best at it, like, why would I want to be the best? Right? Well, okay, I don't know if money is enough motivation for most people to be the best, to look at the small things.
No, I don't think it's enough.
So I feel like, you're guiding him in the right way, and that whatever he does, like, he's not going to do something that doesn't mean something to him.
Yeah. And can I comment real quick on that? You want to know the worst advice I hear being thrown around all the time, and even like especially like billionaires who get on like stage, they're like, it's like, pursue what you're passionate about. Man, I'm passionate about playing golf. Like, I'm not gonna be the PGA Tour, and so at the end of the day, there's no avoiding, because I think that especially the younger generation. I'm a millennial, so like my generation, the generation below, there's this obsession with passion and everything. At the end of the day, like work is work.
That's right.
Making money is hard.
Yeah.
Right. Most of the stuff that I do on a daily basis isn't glamorous work, right?
Yeah.
But what I would say is like find things that you're interested in and that you're highly skilled for, and get really good at it. And I guarantee you, when you start making more money in that, you'll be passionate about it. Oh, you'll be real passionate about it. Oh, but I don't want to just do it for the money. It's like, well, are you making a lot of money now? No, I'm not. I'm like, okay, so when you get to a point where you're making a lot of money, and then you say, well, I just don't care. Like,
it's fun.
Then you can tell me this nonsense. But there's so many people that they're like,
Yeah, everything's going to be worked for, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you didn't work
Life
for
is
it,
hard.
like, what I see is when you don't work for it, you just don't appreciate it and you don't stick through it.
I'll tell you this. Warren Buffett's business partner, Charlie Munger, is like a surrogate grandfather to me. And he passed away, and he had a great saying, which is like, to get the things that you want in life, you need to deserve the things that you want in life, because the world is not a crazy enough place to give
you what you want.
Yeah, to give undeserving people what they want. And what he means by that is that you have to work hard. If there's one thing, like of all the things I'm going to teach my son and his soon-to-be siblings, we're going to hopefully go for another one this year.
All right.
Yeah. is I want to teach them and reward them about the idea of just working hard and being persistent.
Yeah.
Because if you find a way to work as hard as you can and as smart as you can, etc., to make failure like just not an option, like you can achieve great things.
Agreed.
You know?
So again, in closing, thinking about what you just said, so part of the purpose behind the podcast is really to get people like yourself that have skill sets that I don't have, and obviously the people that are watching the podcast, as of now, they really frame up as like starting entrepreneurs, business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs, and I'll just say dreamers, right? We just said that nothing's easy. None of that's all those roles they're hard. You know, you have a battle before you, right? I'm so happy we started the podcast because we're getting a really broad lens, an intersubjective lens to different type of people. People that have worked in the trenches, people that have never worked in the trenches, people that, you know, said from day one they're going to work smart, not hard, and kind of hearing the rationale that you have here is, you know, undeserving, right? If you're not working hard. So
Work smart too.
Yeah.
You know, by all means.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But ain't no money in easy things, man.
No, I agree.
I'll tell you, I have not been, you know, an entrepreneur for a long time, but long enough that I realized I'm like, ain't no money in easy things.
Yeah.
All the easy thing, like non-existent.
the one that have money that are easy are going to put you in an orange jumpsuit. So
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah, if it's you know, I think achieving success and wealth, it can be, you know, easy. It's easy, but it's not simple.
Yeah.
You know, it's like getting in great shape. It's easy. Just don't eat a lot and work out every day.
Yeah.
It's not simple.
that's right.
You know.
Fine.
Yeah.
Agreed.
As Paco goes for another
Yeah, he's going for a second round.
Yeah.
Omar, I want to thank you so much for all the lessons that you've brought today. Hopefully we can have a lifelong friendship from here on.
Totally, absolutely, man.
You know, good luck with trying for the next
thank you.
companion to your son. What's your son's name?
Bearcon.
Bearcon.
Yeah.
Cute little guy. And your wife?
Ilkham.
Ilkan. Tell
Yeah.
them both hello for me, and
will.
thank them for sacrificing a couple hours. Well, probably more than a couple hours with your drive, but the time that you've taken tonight.
Absolutely. And look, I wanted to, you know, thank you and Paco also for having me on the show. It was an honor. I really enjoyed it. It was great to, you know, like have a drink and share some thoughts. And you're a great interviewer. You asked some fantastic questions. I genuinely enjoyed my time here.
Thank you.
Really
I did
mean
as
that.
well. And we're gonna knock out a wall, or we're gonna put in a purifier. So next time you come
yeah,
here,
you
we'll
get
have
cigars.
We'll
Oh,
have some
stogies.
cigars. Yeah, for
That's
sure.
happening.
Yeah.
So
And I appreciate you.
awesome.
This episode has been brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of The State of Medtech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.